Number 1.
So, I had just started dating my current girlfriend around 1.5 years ago and decided to take her to a small beach on a lake in our neighbouring town. We went there to just talk about nothing and look at the stars. We left my house and drove to the lake, parked my car and walked maybe 1/4 mile to the beach. We spoke, laughed and kissed for about an hour when I started to feel uneasy. This was strange, as I don't usually feel this way. I looked towards the tree line on the beach and saw what looked like a man standing near a tree staring towards us. I did not say anything so as not to scare my girlfriend. I kept watch of him off the corner of my eye and noticed that he was inching closer. He was still 100 yards or so away when I saw moonlight reflect off of something in his hand. It took me a second to realize it was a deer knife. I very calmly turned to my girlfriend and said, "We need to leave now." We walked to my car and I glanced over my shoulder at the man 3 or 4 times. He never came towards the road that we were parked on. When we finally got to the car, she asked me what the hell that was about. I told her that there was a man with a knife watching us and began to drive. About 2 minutes into the drive, I called the police to give them a heads up. I can't imagine what would have happened if I didn't notice him and got out of the area.
Number 2.
Not to scare anyone, but this is 100% true, and I would appreciate any questions if anyone is curious. I am quite a loner and like to go on walks just to get some me time. This one night, on the 27th of November, I decided to go on another lengthy walk of mine. There was something eerie this time though, as I had a feeling that the 27th of November is a night that something grotesque was going to happen, and boy, was I right. So, at around 2 a.m, I was restless and made my way into the cold night, with that same feeling of dread I had earlier on in the day. The first hour of my walk was pretty normal and nothing out of the ordinary, but lo and behold, I had a feeling I was being watched. Bearing in mind, it was about 3 a.m. now, and I was sitting on a bench that was in a park that wasn't really well lit. Someone else being in the park was very unlikely, as it's a small town, and the only people who'd be around at this time are drunk pissheads who'd do my head in. Anyways, there was no sound coming from the park figure that caught my eye. He was just standing there, staring in my direction. I looked down at my phone to put my torchlight on and pointed my light towards the dark figure, but to my surprise, he had vanished. Me just being paranoid and extremely tired, I just ignored the weird encounter and decided that it would be best to make my way home and get some shut-eye. Placing my phone back in my pocket and lighting up another cigarette, I made my way back to my house, but still had this uneasy feeling of someone watching me. I'm normally not easily scared, but this felt different, like someone had decided to taunt me. I looked behind me to see that the same dark figure man standing right beside a tree, just looking my way. Now, I know this isn't just something that my mind had made up. I shout to the figure, "Hey man, is there a problem?" You could tell there was a fear in my voice, but I wasn't going to let this creep get the best of me. No response from him. This was just getting weird now. I just stood there and my eyes widened. The man got to the floor and started crawling towards me in a manner that I could only describe as insane. The only thing that I could hear was a hissing noise, which I presumed was only coming from him. I just stood there wondering what on earth was going to happen to me now, but in my current state, I just looked at him with fear. As he edged closer, I vaguely noticed something was dangling from his rucksack. I guessed that it was some bird or some sort of a small creature. Anyway, I didn't want to hang around to find out what it was, so I ran up a small lane right back to my house. Looking back on the ordeal, maybe I shouldn't have headed straight to my house, as he would know where I lived, but my head was in a messed up place from all the fear that this man had caused me. I ran through my gate to my front door and quickly glanced back behind me to find that he was just standing outside my closed gate. One thing that the man said to me will always send chills down my spine to this day. He muttered the words,
"One day, we'll meet again, and this time you'll be coming home with me."
The events of this night had stopped me from going on walks because I still, even to this day, 5 years on, fear that he will come back and take me to some sinister place where he could do whatever the hell he wants to me.
Number 3.
When I was in grade school, my family lived in a house that sat directly across from the school I attended. However, there was about a half a mile of wooded area between them. I was allowed to walk to and from school because it was so straightforward. My mother informed me that she and her siblings walked through the woods to school when they were younger, so it felt like a natural and safe thing for her. I loved the excitement of being able to walk to school all on my own, and I felt pretty at home in the woods, as I had been raised around them. The walk was pretty direct, with very little issues, aside from a small but wide creek that I had to cross. The creek itself was no problem. It was the fact that on each side there was a steep bank that had to be scaled. It wasn't too terrible unless it had been raining. It had rained the day before, so my steps, which were normally loud, were fairly silent. This might have saved my life. It at least saved me from something terrible. When I reached the creek, I was in my own little world. I was thinking about a science project that we had to do at school, and whether or not I was fully prepared for my part in it. I was doing the supernova section and wasn't feeling very ready to make a speech in front of everyone, explaining it. Anyway, I reached the creek and dropped down the first bank with a slightly wet thud. I crossed over the water and began looking for something to grab a hold of to pull myself up with. There were usually roots sticking out to use. Before I could climb up the other side, I heard a noise, like people talking. I stopped and waited to see if I heard it again. I did. I heard a couple of boys talking, getting closer to me. I smashed myself up against the bank and listened for a minute. I don't know why, but something just told me to stay away, that something was wrong. The boys came so close, all the way to the edge of the creek bank, but they didn't jump down. If they had, they would have seen me in a flash. As luck would have it, there was an overhang that I was able to hide under. I listened as the boys talked. "Yeah, she comes through here all the time, man. She should be coming around just in a minute." My heart sank. I was the only person that walked this trail to and from school, and they were in my direct path. This isn't to say that no one else was ever in the woods, but still, in all the time that I used this trail, I had never seen another person. To get to the woods from my house, I had to cross the road and walk through a small, flat area with no trees, and from the school side, I had to walk through the school's football field. Anyone from either side could have seen me going in or out of the woods easily. I stood plastered to the wall of mud, waiting for them to catch me, but they walked around a little bit, smoked a couple of cigarettes, and started getting frustrated. "Where the fuck is she, man? You said that she'd be here, so where is she?" "Maybe she isn't coming to school today, man. Anyway, we gotta go, cause we're gonna miss our bus otherwise." The high schoolers caught their bus to the high school at the elementary school. This told me two things. One, they were obviously in high school, so much older than me, and two, they had some seriously bad intentions towards me. I waited a good 30 minutes or so before I darted out of the creek bed and towards home. I will never know exactly what those two boys had planned to do to me that day, and I'm not sure that I want to know.
Number 4.
Many years ago, my friends and I were dumb, new 21-year-olds, just barely navigating the bar scene in Philly, where we went to college. We hadn't had many weird interactions, save for the occasional creep who would hit on us even when we tried to tell him to get lost. But in July of that summer, we were really enjoying the outdoor cocktails at a bar in Old City when a girl came by. She was around our age, early 20s, with a cool haircut and an outfit I loved. She looked very cool. I don't know how else to put it. She looks like someone worth hanging out with. I was smoking at the time and she asked me for a cigarette and talked to my friend and me for a little bit, just bitching about guys and work and stuff like that. My friend and I were kind of desperate for friends because all of ours had left the city for the summer, so we were glad to have someone our age to talk to. Finally, after we got to know each other a bit, the girl asked my friend Amy and me to come to her apartment. She says that they're holding a party that evening. Then she heads off. Amy and I think, why the hell not? We're bumming around the city that evening with nothing to do. We might as well try to make some new friends. In my mature age now, I realized this was a dumb idea. Don't follow a girl who you just met over a cigarette to another location. A couple of hours later, we were really bored and decided to head to the address this girl gave us. Only when we got there, we realized it was a penthouse on the river. The girl had given me her phone number and I texted her saying that we were there. At this point, Amy was a little wary. We both thought it would be some 20-something apartment, not a penthouse. This girl comes out of the elevator followed by a man in maybe his early 40s or late 30s at least. I didn't expect that. But Amy and I were both trying to be polite, so we followed them into the elevator. During the ride up, the girl told us that she was a dancer. I immediately saw that as a code for stripper, but who the hell am I to judge? I thought. So what if she's a stripper? When we got to the top, around the 14th floor, the elevator opens into an apartment, not a hallway, straight into the apartment. The apartment was honestly gorgeous. All marble, TV mounted into the wall, huge rug, etc. We stepped inside, and Amy and I felt immediately nervous. There were 3 other men there, clearly in their 40s, and we again felt like we had to be polite, though it wasn't at all what we were expecting. The girl ran off into another room and disappeared, while Amy and I made our way into the kitchen. One of the 40-year-olds grinned at us in a terribly creepy way and pulled one of the many bottles of wine that he had from a wine rack and poured us each a glass. While he was doing this and chatting with us, the other 3 men circled around us, all staring. Amy and I were pretty freaked out at that point, and Amy started to say that we were late for a friend's house party. We got up to leave, but one of the men grabbed my arm, telling me, "You're not allowed to leave." Needless to say, that freaked us out even more. Amy and I sat back down and planned our next move by texting each other under the counter, saying, "How the fuck do we get out of here?" Around that time, the girl that we had met ran back into the kitchen completely naked. One of the guys grabbed her and the 2 of them ran back into a room together, leaving 3 men circling Amy and myself. I was stressed out, so I decided to have a cigarette. There was a guy who had been really focused on me this entire time, so that when I went out to the balcony, he followed. I smoked a cigarette, trying to ignore him, despite the fact that it was a tiny balcony and he was staring at me the entire time. Finally, he came up and started rubbing against me. I pushed him off and went to the other corner of the balcony. It was pouring rain at this point, and I was worried about Amy, so I told the guy that we both had to leave. "No, you're not allowed to leave. You have to stay. We're just getting started," he told me. That was one of the last straws. I tossed my cigarette into the rain and pushed open the sliding glass door. I grabbed Amy by the wrist and yelled, "We're late for our friend's party. Let's go," and pushed the elevator button. Miraculously, the elevator hadn't moved in the time that we had been up in the penthouse. Amy and I ran inside and pressed the closed door button repeatedly, watching as the man who had followed me into the balcony charged after us, trying to catch us before the door closed. Thank God, he didn't. The door closed just before he reached us, and we went downstairs, finally spilling out onto the lobby. I turned around and saw, by the lights and numbers above the door, that the elevator was going back to the 14th floor. Amy and I bolted, terrified that one of the guys would follow us down and try to catch us. We ran into the rain and booked it down several blocks before we finally stopped. To this day, we're both freaked out by that encounter. I still think it was too pushy. They wouldn't let us leave after multiple times that we told them we had to leave. Amy agrees with me and has since told me that when I was on the balcony, another man inside told her that she wasn't allowed to leave. I don't know if that's freaky enough,
But hell, it was freaky for me.
Number 5.
About a year ago, something weird happened, and I was wondering what you guys might think of it, so here it goes. It was near my birthday, and I decided to get some clothes with the money that I had been given. As no one was free to come with me, I went alone, which didn't bother me, as I do like a bit of me time. Anyways, it was a really hot day, and it was really busy in the shopping outlet that I decided to spend the day at. I would say that I felt pretty safe with all the people who were surrounding me, but little did I know, in the crowd of people there was someone that was going to turn this shopping trip into a day that I would never forget. I was approaching my favourite shop, which wasn't really that popular, so it wasn't a surprise that the store was next to near empty. As I browsed the t-shirt aisle, I noticed a woman with short brunette hair who couldn't have been older than 40. One thing that made me question this woman was the fact that she was just standing in front of a mirror, looking straight at me. Her blank expression just made me presume that she was just daydreaming, so I thought nothing more of the matter. Fast forward half an hour, and I was all set to try on a bunch of clothes in the changing rooms. As it was a Tuesday afternoon, they didn't have hardly any stuff in, and the changing rooms were completely empty. Also, I believed. None of the doors were shut, so I had a pick of 10 small stores to try on the clothes. Once I started trying on my things, I heard footsteps and felt a weird presence in the darkly lit room. Feeling uneasy, I started getting changed into the clothes that I had wore that day, and then suddenly I saw these tiny pink flip-flops at the foot of my stall. Being freaked out and curious at the same time, I called out to what I thought was a little girl. "Hello, do you need anything?" Silence. This person was just being creepy now, so I decided to call my mother, who was about a 10-minute drive from the shop. 5 minutes later, this person was still standing outside the door, and then, without warning, a bony hand grabbed my foot and started to pull. I screamed in terror, but no one could hear me, and I stepped on the hand and cowered in the corner to try and call my mother once again, with no answer. The feet at this point were gone, so I thought this would be my chance to escape. So I took my clothes and quickly walked out. I turned around just to see if the person was still in the room. And then I see the same pink flip-flops standing at the bottom of the end closed stall. I moved closer and the person must have heard footsteps, and in this small, croaky voice, which to this day I will never forget, said, "I like the blue top on you, but I could hardly see it. Come in here and try it on again for me." How she had seen me in this blue top, I don't know. She must have been looking through the gap in the stall door. With this, I left the changing rooms and dumped the clothes on the side as I left. My mum had agreed to pick me up in half an hour, so I was just wandering around, constantly looking down at the sea of people to see if I could find the pink flip-flops again. Lo and behold, in the distance, I see the same woman who was standing by the mirror, staring at me earlier in the shop with the same pink flip-flops. I quickly head off in the opposite direction so she wouldn't be able to see me. I told my mum about the whole ordeal, and she said that I shouldn't go back to that shop again. Being quite young, I was disappointed, but was old enough to realize that it was for my own good. Even 2 years on, I haven't been in that shop again, and I never plan to go back there.
Number 6.
I'll start with a landscape background, so you can better understand the story. My boyfriend and I live in a little house right in the middle of all the businesses in our town. Our backyard is facing a sort of an alley, and our front yard is facing the main road. There is a parking lot on one side and a strip mall type building with about 5 or so businesses in it. One summer night, me, my boyfriend, and his cousin are all sitting in the backyard having a fire and a few drinks, when this random older man wanders into our yard and asks if he could join. We didn't have a fence at the time, so we were kind of used to people wandering in trying to join our fun. Most times we just tell them it's a closed party and they all just leave without a problem. But this guy mentions that he owns a computer store next door, so my boyfriend, being the neighborly type, tells him that he can sit and offers him a beer. Couldn't hurt to know a local business owner, right? Well, about 5 or 10 minutes into him being there, he reaches into his pockets and pulls out some pills and says that they're ecstasy and asks if we want some. We tell him, "No thanks, buddy, but go hard." Then he starts very persistently trying to push these pills on me. "Oh, have some fun," he keeps saying. So this pisses off my boyfriend and he tells him to get lost, in not so many nice words. Then, after that, I see him every day between noon and 2 like clockwork, walking past my house to the liquor store. He always has his little dog with him and stops at my front yard to let his dog do its business. I think he does this on purpose to drive my dogs nuts and get them barking, because there's like 1,000 other spots for his dog to go. Anyway, fast forward about a year, I'm home alone, waiting for my boyfriend to get home from work. Being a cautious young lady, I always lock my doors when I'm home alone, so it's like 9:30 or 10, and I hear screeching tires outside and see headlights kinda shining through the cracks of my curtains. Then I hear yelling. So now I run outside to see what's going on, and it's my boyfriend and his cousin. They caught the creepy computer guy about 2 feet away facing my living room window, where I was sitting and watching TV inside, trying to peek in at me. Just retelling this story gives me the creeps. Imagine if I forgot to lock the doors that night, or fell asleep on the couch with my curtains open. I'm not sure exactly what he was up to, but it couldn't have been any good if he was creeping late at night. Now, he walks clear across the street to get his beer. He won't even face our house. I know this because I stare him down every time, and sometimes I'll open my curtain fast to try and catch him in the act myself. Freaky. But now, my boyfriend got a security camera, so I'll update you guys if we ever catch the creeper.